Imagine standing at the foot of a hill in San Simeon, California, on August 14th, 1951. The Pacific Ocean stretches westward in cold silence, a gray-green expanse that hears nothing and tells no one. The fog rolls in low from the coast, as it always does, wrapping the lower slopes of the Santa Lucia Mountains in a damp gray veil. But 1,600 feet above you, perched on the crown of La Cuesta Encantada, the enchanted hill, something sits in the morning light that should not exist. Something that was never supposed to belong to anyone but one man. A palace, a fortress, a monument, a cage, built from concrete and manti stone and 6,000 years of plundered European history. Its twin Baroque towers pierce the morning sky like the fingers of man refusing to let go of something already gone. The man himself is not here. He has not been here for 4 years. He left in 1947, frail and breathless, carried down that hill in a medical transport because the remoteness of his beloved dream had become the cruelty of his old age. A man who once commanded 28 newspapers, who once whispered into the ears of presidents, who once held so much power that a single headline in one of his papers could push a country into war. That man left this castle with a suitcase and a broken heart and never came back. On this August morning in Beverly Hills, that man draws his last breath. He is 88 years old. He is alone, in a sense that has nothing to do with the people standing around him. His legal wife, Millicent, has not lived with him for decades. The woman he loved with terrifying devotion, Marion Davies, had sat beside him through the long months of his decline, her hand in his. But even she could not hold him here. The newspapers report his death with the solemnity due a giant. His name is William Randolph Hearst, and this is the story of the castle he built for a world that was never allowed inside. Look closely at what he left behind. Not the newspapers, not the empire, which had already cracked and splintered and been handed over to other men's keeping in his own lifetime. No, what endures is this. 127 acres of terrace gardens on a California hilltop, a main building of 165 rooms, 42 bedrooms and 61 bathrooms, twin towers modeled on a 14th century Spanish church, an outdoor swimming pool built from Vermont marble measuring 104 feet long, and an indoor Roman pool tiled in glass and gold leaf that took 10 years to complete. A private zoo, a private airfield, a private movie theater, a world built entirely to one man's specifications, for guests who came by invitation only, who arrived by private plane and left knowing that everything they had seen, the Flemish tapestries, the Renaissance paintings, the Gothic fireplaces plucked stone by stone from French chateaus and reassembled in California, had been assembled by a man who could not stop building, could not stop acquiring, could not stop adding room after room after room to a palace that was never truly meant for anyone else to see. The secret of this place is not in the architecture. The secret is what the architecture reveals. And to understand that, we must go back not to the hill but to a man. We must go back to the beginning. We must go back to April 29th, 1863. San Francisco in 1863 is a city that smells of ambition. The salt air off the bay mingles with sawdust from the gold rush construction that never quite stopped, with coal smoke from the foundries on the waterfront, and with the particular scent of new money, that metallic, slightly rotten perfume that follows great wealth wherever it goes. Into this world, on a clear spring morning, a boy is born to George Hearst and Phoebe Apperson Hearst, and they name him William Randolph. He is their only child. He will remain their only child for the rest of their lives, which means that everything, the mining fortune, the political ambitions, the social dreams his mother Phoebe carries like a lantern through every room she enters, everything will be poured into him. He will grow up not merely wealthy, but saturated with wealth, so immersed in it that money will cease to feel like a resource and begin to feel like a birthright, as natural and limitless as air. George Hearst is not a man of culture. He is a man of the earth, a Missouri-born mining genius who made his fortune digging silver and gold from the reluctant rock of the American West. He wins the Comstock lode in Nevada. He wins the Homestake gold mine in South Dakota. He wins at the card table, a failing newspaper called the San Francisco Examiner, which he takes as payment for a gambling debt and then mostly ignores, because a man who controls the deep metal bones of a continent has little time for words on paper. But his wife Phoebe is a woman of enormous interior life. She reads, she thinks, she collects art with the focus of someone who understands that beauty is its own kind of power. And when William is 10 years old, in the spring of 1873, she takes her son by the hand and leads him across the Atlantic into Europe, into the cathedrals and castles and royal palaces that she herself has long dreamed of seeing. Imagine that boy, 10 years old, standing in the nave of some soaring Gothic cathedral in Germany, reportedly the Rheingau region, where the ancient stone churches rise from vine-covered hills above the river. The late afternoon light falling in columns of amber and rose through the stained glass. The echo of his own small footstep returning to him from somewhere impossibly far above. He stands in the grandeur of Versailles, where the Hall of Mirrors sends his own reflection back at him in an endless corridor of gold and candlelight. He walks through the medieval fortresses of Spain, touching the cold limestone walls, feeling the weight of centuries under his fingers. He does not know what to do with what he is feeling. He is 10, but something happens in those weeks and months that changes the architecture of his soul. He makes a decision that he may not even know he is making. Someday, he tells himself, or perhaps he tells his mother, who listens with that quiet smile she always wore when she recognized genius in her son, someday, I will build something like this. Something that belongs to me. He carries this dream with him through St. Paul's Preparatory School in Concord, New Hampshire, through the rolling green hills and cold winters that feel nothing like California. He carries it to Harvard, where he arrives in 1885 with too much money, too much confidence, and too little patience for the measured pace of academic life. At Harvard, he does not distinguish himself as a scholar. He distinguishes himself as a presence. He manages the Harvard Lampoon with a businessman's instinct, redesigning it, hiring better writers, cutting costs, boosting circulation, and he is elected to the hasty pudding theatrical society, where his love of drama, of spectacle, of the curated event, first finds its expression. He is eventually expelled. The precise reasons are debated, but witnesses claim he disrupted the institution as much as he tried to run it, throwing lavish parties in his dormitory, conducting affairs with spectacular carelessness, treating the university the way he would later treat the news, as raw material to be shaped by his will. His father wants him to go into mining. His father sees in him the raw intelligence of an empire builder and imagines that intelligence drilling into mountains, hauling up silver and gold. But William Randolph Hearst has seen Paris. He has stood in the shadow of Gothic towers. He does not want mountains. He wants men. In 1887, at the age of 24, he walks into his father's office in San Francisco and asks for the newspaper. The San Francisco Examiner. That gambling debt, that afterthought of George Hearst's card game, that struggling sheet with a circulation of 5,000 and a reputation for losing money. Give it to me, the young man says. He is not asking. His father, who likely expected the request, likely had mixed feelings about the answer. He relents. Perhaps he saw something in his son's eyes that reminded him of himself, of his own young certainty that the mountain would yield if only you hit it hard enough. He hands over the Examiner. He does not know that he has just detonated an explosion in American journalism. The young Hearst moves into the Examiner like a force of nature in a business suit. He hires the best writers he can find, pays more than anyone else in the industry, poaches talent from rival papers with the gleeful aggression of a man who understands that talent is the only currency that matters. He brings in writers of the caliber of Ambrose Bierce, that dark genius of the American grotesque, whose biting wit will give the paper a voice unlike anything else in the city. He invests in the best printing equipment money can buy, because he understands instinctively what later media theorists will take decades to articulate. That the medium is inseparable from the message, and that a beautiful newspaper commands attention before a single word is read. Within 3 years, the Examiner circulation has grown from 5,000 to over 55,000. It is turning a profit. It is, by any measure, a success. But William Randolph Hearst does not think in terms of individual successes. He thinks in terms of dominion. In 1895, Hearst heads east. He arrives in New York City, which is the center of the American universe, the place where power pools like water in a valley, and he purchases the failing Morning Journal for $180,000, his mother's money, Phoebe's fortune now that George is dead, and Phoebe funds her son's ambitions with the terrifying faith of a woman who has never stopped believing he is capable of anything. What Hearst does next will define American journalism for a generation and haunt it for a century. He goes to war with Joseph Pulitzer. The war is fought on paper, in ink, in the screaming fonts of competing front pages. Pulitzer's New York World had perfected the art of sensationalist journalism. Lurid crime stories, melodramatic human interest pieces, the kind of coverage that made the working-class immigrant reader of the 1890s feel that the newspaper understood his world. Hearst takes this formula and compounds it, turns up every dial to maximum, adds color illustrations, adds Sunday supplements, adds a comic strip called The Yellow Kid, whose name, by historical accident or pointed irony, will give this era of journalism its lasting epithet. Yellow journalism. The journalism of exaggeration, of invention, of manufactured outrage in the service of manufactured circulation. The pinnacle of this rivalry, or perhaps its nadir, comes with the Spanish-American War of 1898. Cuba is struggling for independence from Spain. Hearst sends his reporters and his illustrator Frederick Remington to cover the growing tension. Reportedly, and this story, whether apocryphal or not, has become one of the defining legends of American media. Remington sends a telegram back from Havana saying there is nothing to report, no war in sight. Hearst, the story goes, replies, "Please remain. You furnish the pictures, and I'll furnish the war." Whether he literally sent those words is disputed by historians. But whether he meant them or not, he lived them. His papers covered the Cuban crisis with the breathless urgency of men who wanted war, because war sold papers, and when war came, the Hearst press claimed credit for it with the naked pride of a man who had learned that creating the news was more powerful than simply reporting it. By 1902, Hearst newspapers cover major cities across America. He is elected to the United States House of Representatives from New York, where he serves 2 terms, and he burns with a deeper ambition still, the presidency itself. He campaigned for the Democratic presidential nomination in 1904, loses it to Alton B. Parker, who then loses the election to Theodore Roosevelt in a landslide. He runs for mayor of New York. He runs for governor of New York. He loses both, undone in part by the ruthless machine politics of Tammany Hall, which has never forgiven him for attacking its corruption in his newspapers. After 1908, Hearst never holds elected office again. The political defeats bruise him more than he shows. He is a man who has rarely been told no, a man whose entire adult life has confirmed that will and money together are nearly unstoppable. To be stopped by voters, by machines, by forces that do not yield to the Hearst checkbook or the Hearst headline, is something he absorbs quietly and redirects into his work. He builds, he expands, he acquires, he buys magazines, Cosmopolitan, Good Housekeeping, Town and Country, Harper's Bazaar. He launches newsreel services, radio stations, a film production company. By the late 1920s, the Hearst Corporation is the largest media company in the world, a colossus whose shadow falls over nearly every news-consuming American. 1 in 4 Americans, it is said, gets their information from a Hearst publication. He is not merely a publisher. He is the architecture of American thought, the invisible hand that shapes what a nation believes it knows. And in the middle of all this, the newspapers and the magazines and the radio stations and the political campaigns and the crushing weight of running the largest private media empire on earth. He falls in love. He meets Marion Davies in 1916. She's performing in the Ziegfeld Follies on Broadway, 19 years old, blonde and radiant in the way that only certain people are radiant, with a quality of light that seems to come from within rather than from the stage lights above. He is 53. He is married. He has 5 sons, George, William Randolph Jr., John, and the twins Randolph and David, born to his wife Millicent Wilson, whom he married in 1903. He walks into the theater on that autumn evening in 1916, and something shifts inside him that he will spend the rest of his life building monuments to. Marion Davies is not the helpless kept woman that legend has made her. She is funny, wickedly, surprisingly funny, a natural comedian who reportedly had the gift of making anyone in a room feel they were the most important person in it. She is also an accomplished actress, her talent consistently obscured by the very power Hearst applies to promote her, because a man who controls every newspaper in America is not, as it turns out, the ideal publicist. When you force critics to praise a film, the praise tastes of coercion. When you use your editorial power to manufacture a star, the star is tainted by the machinery of her own creation. This is the great paradox of Hearst's love for Marion. The more he tries to give her, the more his giving costs her. He is still legally married to Millicent. He will remain legally married to her until his death, not because he is indifferent to Davies, but because Millicent, a woman of considerable dignity and considerable Catholic faith, refuses to grant a divorce. She and Hearst separate in the mid-1920s, quietly, without scandal, with the civilized architecture of a wealthy couple who understand that the public world they inhabit requires a certain maintained fiction. Millicent turns her energy to philanthropy. She's by all accounts a genuinely compassionate and productive social reformer, and Hearst turns his energy to building. In 1919, his mother Phoebe dies. She leaves him the San Simeon land, 250,000 acres of California coastline and mountain and plain that George Hearst had assembled with the same systematic hunger his son would later apply to newspapers. Hearst inherits the land, and, with it, the childhood dream he has never let go. The dream of the castle. The dream of the hill. He contacts Julia Morgan, an architect of extraordinary vision and quiet revolutionary stature. She is the first woman to be licensed as an architect in the state of California, having earned her degree from the École des Beaux-Arts in Paris when the institution barely acknowledged women's existence. He tells her what he wants. A hillside camp, he calls it initially with almost laughable understatement. Something comfortable. Something that reflects his art collection. Julia Morgan hears what he actually means. She begins drawing in 1919, and she does not stop drawing for 28 years. Consider what it means to build a palace in California in 1919. There are no highways leading to San Simeon. The nearest town of any consequence is 3 hours away by horse. The construction materials must be shipped by sea to the village of San Simeon below the hill, then hauled up 1,600 feet of switchback road by truck and mule. Everything, the Italian limestone, the hand-carved Gothic choir stalls, the ancient Roman temple stones to be built into the Neptune Pool Terrace. Everything must make this journey. The logistics alone would have defeated a lesser man. But William Randolph Hearst is not building a home. He is building an argument that beauty is possible, that taste can be manufactured from money and will, that the wild California hillside can be transformed into something that makes European civilization look modest. He will spend the next 28 years proving his point. La Cuesta Encantada, the Enchanted Hill, rises 1,600 feet above the Pacific, and on its crown, what Hearst and Morgan create is not a single structure, but an entire world. The main building, Casa Grande, the big house, stands at the center, its twin towers modeled after the Church of San Maria la Mayor in Ronda, Spain, those towers rising in tiers of ornamented stone into the California sky, their bells audible on quiet mornings all the way down to the village. The facade is faced with manti stone from Utah, its surfaces playing light in the way Morgan intended, golden at noon, amber at sunset, silver in the fog that comes rolling in from the Pacific at dusk. The Churrigueresque style that inspired Morgan's design is a Spanish Baroque school that controls its ornament with surgical